Hi, I'm Jeanette Roche. This is Bridge City News. Here are some of the top stories we've been following. With MPs back in the House of Commons today, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre wants to call for a non-confidence vote on the PM. Plus, Air Canada and the Pilots Union reach a tentative agreement avoiding a strike and nationwide shutdown of the airline. And Florida police question a suspect following a second alleged assassination attempt on the former president's life. We get details from our U.S.-based foreign correspondent.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Jeanette Roche.
Thanks for joining us. Despite a man receiving substantial injuries to his head and leg, he was able to call for help after being severely mauled by a bear last Friday just after 11 a.m. The incident occurred on the Great Divide Trail near Window Mountain Lake and in the Crow's Nest Pass. Alberta RCMP Public Information Officer Constable Corey Riggs says with the assistance of Crow's Nest Fire Rescue, Fish and Wildlife, Search and Rescue, and STARS, the man was taken to a hospital where he is being treated for his injuries.
So the hiker was absolutely prepared. He had hiking poles. He also had bear spray. And thankfully, he did have this device. So he was able to contact the emergency services. And he was able to articulate what was going on. And since he was using a SOS device, it also provided us his coordinates. So that was amazing in helping us send the help that he needed. Anytime that you're in the wilderness, there's always a chance of an interaction with a wild animal. It's all about being prepared for the different situations that might come up. So that might look like doing some research to see what kind of animals are in the area. Because anytime you go hiking or in the wilderness, you have to be aware that you are entering someone's habitat, right? So just having bear spray typically isn't enough because you never know when this might happen and you might not have time to utilize that.
Riggs says no matter what your experience level is while exploring the wilderness, SOS devices are an essential tool for anyone who may find themselves in an emergency situation. Always make sure you notify others of your planned route along with your time of departure and approximate return. Air Canada and its pilots union reached a tentative agreement over the weekend, avoiding a strike and nationwide shutdown. If a deal had not been reached, cancellations would have started as early as this morning. If ratified, the tentative agreement will generate an approximate additional $1.9 billion of value for Air Canada pilots over the course of the agreement. Ratification requires approval by a majority of the voting membership, who will soon receive the tentative agreement for review. The airline has more than 5,400 pilots. Well, the House of Commons is back in session today for the first time since the NDP leader ended an alliance with the ruling Liberals just prior to summer break. And Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is hoping to bring a non-confidence motion against the government as early as this week.
The carbon tax, which Trudeau famously promised would never go above 11 cents a litre. Now it's 17 cents a litre, 60% higher. And he and the NDP Liberal government have voted to increase it over the next 5.5 years by 300% to 61 cents a litre.
Poilievre says he hopes to get the support of the Bloc Québécois and particularly the New Democrats after they tore up a supply and confidence deal with the minority Liberals earlier this month. Federal NDP leader Jagmeet Singh was asked about this at a press briefing today as MPs returned to Parliament.
Every motion that comes before us, we'll take a look at it and we'll make a determination what's in the best interest of Canadians. I know by ripping up the agreement, that has made an election date more likely. We will be ready for an election.
Meanwhile, the Liberals are hitting back at the Conservatives after Poilievre called their carbon tax price policy an existential threat to the country. Speaking ahead of the opening of the Parliament's fall sitting, Liberal House leader Karina Gould called the Conservative leader a, quote, a fraudster.
And there's a reason why he doesn't want Canadians to know what his true agenda is. And it's because he knows that they won't like it if they find out.
MPs in Ottawa are also keeping their eyes on 2 federal by-elections, which are underway today. The Liberals are in a tight race to hold on to a seat in Montreal, and in Winnipeg, the NDPs are battling it out against the Conservatives. A man suspected of trying to assassinate former President Donald Trump on Sunday allegedly camped out near a West Palm Beach, Florida golf course for 12 hours until he was spotted by a Secret Service agent. According to court documents, Ryan Wesley Routh came equipped with food and a firearm as he waited for the Republican nominee to be in range. The 58-year-old faces charges of possessing a firearm and possessing a firearm with an obliterated serial number. Additional and more serious charges are possible. With more about this is our U.S. Foreign Affairs correspondent, Lisa Daftari.
A lot of the reports this morning are talking about why this individual even knew where Donald Trump would be on the golf course at that specific time. So who's leaking? I mean, how is this sensitive information getting out? And will there be another attempt? I mean, this is crazy. I saw a meme, obviously tongue in cheek this morning, that said right now, the number of assassination attempts against Trump equal the number of media interviews that Kamala Harris has done. So, I mean, it's meant to be a joke, but it really, enough is enough.
Catch the full interview with Lisa Daftari of the Foreign Desk and myself coming up after Business News. Meanwhile, U.S. President Joe Biden on Monday commended the Secret Service for its, quote, expert handling of the apparent assassination attempt on the former president.
I commend the Secret Service for the expert handling of the situation. And the former president is protected from harm and the subject is in custody. An acting head of the Secret Service is in Florida today assessing what happened and determining whether any further adjustments need to be made to ensure the safety of our former president. Let me just say, there is no, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, those of you who know me, many of you do, no place in political violence for political violence in America. None. Zero. Never.
Here in Canada, demonstrators turned up at rallies in cities across the country over the weekend to call on the federal government to take more action to regularize undocumented workers in Canada who are contributing to society. In 2019, the federal government launched a regularization program for asylum seekers who worked in the healthcare sector. Trudeau later expressed interest in expanding the initiative, but in the last few weeks, the federal government has announced new restrictions, including the end of temporary visitors having the opportunity to apply for a work permit within Canada. Demonstrators are calling on the permanent residency of migrants and undocumented residents, claiming that student visas used to be advertised as a path to permanent residency. The city of Calgary will vote on Tuesday to officially transfer the Green Line LRT project to the province. The province issued an independent review on the project after concerns arose about the city increasing the budget while shortening the number of stations, which caused the province to pull funding. During her radio show, Premier Danielle Smith spoke on Your Province, Your Premier, how the Green Line project was not viable the way it was being proposed. She claimed the first 9-kilometer phase that goes from, quote, nowhere to nowhere would cost nearly $6.5 billion, and the full 46-kilometer project would exceed $20 billion. A rally took place Monday at Calgary City Hall, held by the Calgary Alliance for the Common Good, voicing that the project must prioritize Calgarians over politics and come to a solution based on the available evidence. RCMP say alcohol may have been a factor in a fatal weekend crash involving a truck full of teenagers in eastern Alberta. According to authorities, it happened early Sunday morning near Consort, some 260 kilometers northeast of Calgary. They say a truck carrying 17s crashed, killing 2 males who were aged 17 and 19. After a 38-day manhunt, RCMP have arrested 28-year-old Elijah Blake Strawberry, who was charged with second-degree murder. The arrest concludes the search for both suspects, who on August the 6th shot and killed Colin Huff, a Rocky View County employee north of Chestermere. Another Fortis, Alberta employee also sustained injuries. The other suspect, Arthur Wayne Penner, was arrested 5 days after the incident and charged with first-degree murder and attempted murder. Strawberry was found and arrested at a residence in Ochis First Nation without incident after a province-wide search, including a $10,000 reward for information leading to his arrest. The investigation into last month's shooting is still ongoing. A former CFL player has died in a motorcycle crash in Edmonton. The Saskatchewan Roughriders say Ben Fairbrother was killed on Friday. The 51-year-old played with the Riders over 4 seasons before joining the BC Lions as a free agent. Most recently, he was an offensive line coach with the Edmonton Wildcats of the Junior Football League. Very sad. Well, Lethbridge police have charged a 28-year-old man after he fled from officers in a vehicle and later barricaded himself inside a West Side home. It all started last Friday just before 11 a.m. when police observed him operating a vehicle while wanted on outstanding warrants. While he was parking, police attempted to pin his vehicle to prevent it from leaving. But the driver was able to reverse and forcefully accelerate, fleeing the area at a high rate of speed, driving across a green strip and a sidewalk and cutting off other motorists. Due to the risk to public safety, police did not pursue him. Later that day, the man was located at a residence along the 100 block of Cowichan Court West. He was reported to be armed with a firearm and barricaded himself inside the home. There was a warrant to enter the home, and it was granted, and he was taken into custody. Police seized the firearm that had been dismantled and pieces hidden throughout the residence. Dylan Ivan Sokol, 28 of Coaldale, faces multiple charges and is scheduled to appear in court on September the 17th. Well, soon, Lethbridge could be feeding police officers into the city of Grand Prairie. The Police Cadet Certificate is the newest program offered by Lethbridge Polytechnic. Trudy Manson, Dean of the Center for Justice and Human Services, explains the post-secondary credential takes between 22 and 24 weeks to be completed. She says this ladders into a diploma program. Manson explains how this program is delivered and what the curriculum offers.
The curriculum has been built in conjunction with our police agency partners. We work together to build the curriculum to make sure it's current and it's exactly what they need. But it also provides the recruits an opportunity to further their education if they so choose. They can finish their certificate and then they ladder right into our diploma with 42 credits already earned. They can complete our diploma online while they're working, so it provides a great educational opportunity for them. We work with the agency and we deliver collaboratively the police cadet training. And so that means in Grand Prairie, we'll be sending law instructors up there, and our law instructors will be traveling and teaching all the law. We also have our Be Fit for Life Center working with all the wellness and physical training for the cadets up in Grand Prairie. And Grand Prairie Police Service will actually fill in a lot of the other areas. So we actually are the only institution that delivers this type of model to police partners. All the other training in the province is actually done through the province or through the specific police agencies.
Manson says the Grand Prairie Police Services is the first municipal police service since 1956 in Alberta. Very interesting. Well, the shorts and t-shirts weather will soon come to a close, and parents are looking to outfit their children with the proper gear that they need to survive those frigid months. Sakuto Shah is the executive director for the Every Voice Matters Society. His organization has launched a campaign called Let's Beat the Cold Together, which is accepting donations of jackets, toques, mittens, and boots for children in the K through 12 grades.
There are a lot of kids in the community from a lot of school divisions, a lot of people who are young as well, so parents cannot afford in our cold weather, and kids go with the sweaters and all that stuff. I have my own 2 kids, so I know how it feels at -40 in a sweater.
As I've often said, anything that we can do to support our youth, which means any investment in our youth is an investment in our future, in this city's future, in this country's future. And this is certainly one of those initiatives that we are more than proud and happy to partner with Mr. Shah and his team to hopefully bring some success to it and put some warm clothes on some of our youths' backs so they can actually have a great winter.
The provincial statistic for children under the age of 15 living in poverty is 1 in 6. And in the city of Lethbridge, that statistic is 1 in 5. And I know within our school division, we serve over 150 students annually with winter gear. And it costs approximately $200 to outfit a student with mitts, snow pants, gloves, toque, all the things that they need.
Donations of winter items can be dropped off at the Lethbridge Police Service building. After the federal government and Health Canada initially approved the sale of nicotine pouches last year, the decision was overturned this summer and have restricted brands like Zen and Zonic to pharmacies. Nicotine pouches, which are used to help people quit smoking, have seen a dangerous trend rise last year. It's formerly available in places like convenience stores, along with colored packaging, and various flavors appealed to young people for recreational use. A pharmacist spoke with BCN about the dangers nicotine pouches have on children and what they can now do if anyone is struggling with addiction.
They need help from the healthcare professional. So they can come down and, like any healthcare professional, if you go any pharmacy or even doctor, we can do counseling for that thing and we can help with some product. But right now, as soon as they are out in market, chances are they might go a little bit with the withdrawal, but it's a right time to take off because school are starting. So as soon as school start, there might be more uptake of those pouches. With the regulation, it says that it's not authorized to sell for minors under 18, but there were no regulation. So you can still sell it at the gas station, and they used to keep it right beside the candies and everything, so anyone can grab it. Main focus for Johnny company was the social media. So they used to do too much social media advertising, and because of their children and teenagers used to grab the box and they used to start using them. So they were using for recreational. So when you are like children or teenager, and when you take just a small amount of nicotine, chances, even if you quit, chances that you will go on the other nicotine product like cigarettes or something else, chewing tobacco, chances are really more.
While the restrictions are meant to maintain the integral health of young children and teenagers, there have also been recent concerns of a shortage of nicotine products to those who need to quit smoking. Across the pond now, around 17 people have been confirmed dead as Central Europe witnessed torrential rainfall causing mass flooding in a matter of days. Poland, Czechia, Austria, and Romania have all been affected. Flooding has reportedly burst dams and embankments and covered streets with mud and debris. Cities in northeast Czech Republic have been completely submerged, and thousands have been evacuated. The mayor in Budapest, capital of Hungary, warned of the worst floods in a decade to come this week from the overflowing Danube River. That is so devastating. Quite the opposite here today in southern Alberta, though. Clear skies, lots of sunshine. We saw that high of 23 degrees today, but we could see some showers return by Tuesday. I will be right back with a look at weather from across the nation. Welcome back. Well, after a lovely sunny day here in Lethbridge, we could see the slight chance of showers this evening. Also tomorrow, Tuesday, could see some showers as well. 22 for the expected high, which is still a little higher than seasonal. And then as we get into Wednesday, that's more around seasonal, 18 degrees. Could see some showers then too. And then clear skies on Thursday and Friday, highs of 21 and 22 degrees on those days. And then looking at a cooler weekend ahead of us, 14 for the high on Saturday with overcast skies, and could see a high of only 11 degrees on a Sunday. Could see some showers then too. So the average high for this time of year, 19. Average low, 5 degrees. Record high on this day happened back in 2009 there. We're seeing 33 degrees that day. And the record low on this day was -4, happening back in 1973. Okay, sun rose this morning at 7:09, sunset this evening at 7:41. So that means that we're seeing 12 hours, 31 minutes of daylight today. Actually, 10 minutes less daylight than we saw on Friday. I don't know what happened over the weekend there. A lot less daylight today, though. On the coast tomorrow, seeing 15 for the high in Victoria, 70% a chance of showers, 40K winds in that Juan de Fuca Strait, 70% chance rather of showers as well in Vancouver, high of 16 degrees. Edmonton, sunshine, fog patches in the morning there, 23 for the high of 20 degrees in Calgary tomorrow with lovely clear skies. As we get to the rest of the prairies here, could see a 60% chance of showers in Saskatoon, risk of thunderstorms, 21 for the high. A beautiful 26 degrees, though, in Regina could see chance of showers there, chance of thunderstorms as well. But clear skies expected tomorrow in Winnipeg with a beautiful 26 degrees, still feeling like summer there. As for the rest of the country, we're seeing mainly clear skies, lots of sunshine across the central part of the country there. Toronto sitting at 26, 29 in Ottawa, also Montreal sitting at 29 degrees. And then as we get into Atlantic Canada, also seeing a lot of clear skies, lots of beautiful sunshine and some not bad temperatures as well. 29 for the high in Fredericton, 26 Halifax, 26 also in Charlottetown, and 21 for the expected high tomorrow in St. John's, and looking at partly cloudy skies there. So there you have it. That is your forecast. The Canadian Real Estate Association says the number of homes sold in August fell 2.1% compared with the same month last year. The national average sale price for August inched up slightly from a year earlier to $649,100, while the number of newly listed properties was up 1.1% from July. The association says the market remained largely stuck in a holding pattern despite borrowing costs beginning to come down. A senior economist with the association says it makes sense prospective buyers may continue to hold off for improved affordability. Well, higher sales from the petroleum, coal, and chemical products sellers helped manufacturing sales rise 1.4% in July. Statistics Canada says total sales rose to $71 billion following a 1.7% decrease in June. Sales in the petroleum and coal product subsector gained 6.7%, while chemical product sales rose 5.3%. Sales of wood products reached its lowest level since May of last year, falling 4.8% for the month to $2.9 billion. Now here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was up 133 points to 23,702. The Dow was also up 229 points to 41,622. The S&P 500 was up 7 points to 5,633. And the NASDAQ was down 91 points and sits at 17,592. West Texas Intermediate oil was up $1.86 to $70.51 US per barrel. Natural gas was down a nickel to $2.30 US. Gold was up $4.14 to $2,583.50 US an ounce. And silver was up 0.8 of a cent to $30.73 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $7.70 per bushel, barley is at $6.05, canola is at $12.79, and corn is at $7.39 per bushel. Live cattle October contract was down 42 cents to $177.22. Feeder cattle September contract was up 60 cents to $241.30, and lean hogs October contract was up $1.47 to $79.92. And the Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours and currently sits at 73.79 US.
Recapping one of our top stories, the House of Commons resumed today for the first time since the NDP leader ended an alliance with the ruling Liberals just prior to summer break. Meanwhile, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre hopes to bring a non-confidence motion against the government as early as this week. Up next, another assassination attempt on the former U.S. president. Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari is on deck right after the break to speak about it. She also discusses how U.S. lawmakers are still unsure where billions of dollars have gone years after federal COVID-era relief was passed. And hey, when you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. Also, be sure to visit our website anytime to check our number of stories and interviews. Well, lots happening south of the border and beyond, including a bombshell report about last week's debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. And what is this about another assassination attempt on Trump? Here to discuss it all is our foreign affairs correspondent, Lisa Daftaria, joining us from Los Angeles. Lisa, welcome back to Bridge City News. Great to have you on, as always.
Thank you for having me, Jeanette. Great to be on.
Of course. So, Lisa, there has now been not one, but two alleged assassination attempts on former President Donald Trump's life. Now, FBI are saying that Trump was playing golf in West Palm Beach, Florida, when Secret Service noticed the barrel of a rifle sticking out of the bushes. So, Lisa, what do we know thus far about this alleged attempt?
So the suspect is in custody. That's the good news in the sense that he's been caught. A witness reported his license plate and they were able to apprehend him very shortly thereafter. Somebody who's been donating to the Democrat Party for years, different interest groups, as well as posting very, very concerning posts about the war in Ukraine. And of course, it's come out that he's also very anti-Semitic. A lot of his posts had that nature. It's interesting because this morning, there will be many investigations into this. Governor DeSantis said that Florida will be conducting their own independent investigation apart from the federal investigation, as well as obviously there are a lot of individuals looking into this, and I know a lot of the reports this morning are talking about why this individual even knew where Donald Trump would be on the golf course at that specific time. So who's leaking? How is this sensitive information getting out? And will there be another attempt? This is crazy. I saw a meme, obviously tongue-in-cheek this morning, that said right now, the number of assassination attempts against Trump equal the number of media interviews that Kamala Harris has done. So, it's meant to be a joke, but it really, enough is enough. We don't want any political violence. We don't want any violence against anyone who is serving in office, and we don't want this to become a precedent on either side anywhere in the world. So I think it's very important that this is a bipartisan issue and we talk about it that way.
Yeah, interesting that you brought that up because I was going to ask, how did this person know about Trump's schedule? As far as I had heard, Trump hadn't booked the time or anything. I think it was just he just showed up spontaneous. How did he even get on the golf course? Do we know anything?
Right, exactly. This is obviously a very targeted, very strategic effort that the shooter made to do that. He was wearing a bulletproof vest, so it's not somebody who's suicidal in that sense. Carrying his ammunition and then his getaway car. So as soon as the Secret Service did realize that he is there, he jumped in his black SUV and fled the area. But again, there were witnesses there that were able to identify his car, and that is how he was apprehended.
Oh gosh, the times that we are living in right now. Okay, so speaking of Trump, many of us took in last week's live debate between Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris. It was, of course, moderated by the network ABC, and according to a report, an ABC whistleblower affidavit has been released this morning alleging that ABC coordinated with the Harris campaign to give her sample questions prior to the debate, a big no-no. And this is allegedly a sworn statement under penalty of perjury. So, Lisa, this is serious.
It is serious. And up to now, this was a conspiracy theory, right? This was, social media, MAGA people accusing ABC and the Kamala Harris campaign of cheating and knowing the questions and, colluding with both ABC and the two moderators. It seemed to many that this was a lopsided debate in several ways. The angles of the camera, the fact checking that was only used against Donald Trump, the questions, the confidence confidence that Kamala Harris exuded that we haven't seen. I mean, maybe she was well prepared, but maybe there was foul play. And now here we have it. Jeanette, as you said, there was in fact foul play. I mean, this, according to this affidavit, according to this whistleblower who wants to get this story out. So again, I want to really emphasize this because we're in this for the long run. We want to protect our democracy. We want to protect our country. We want to protect the integrity of the media on both sides. We want to protect the integrity of our government and the establishment of the White House, again, on both sides. So, I mean, if you're, you know, out there and you're pro Kamala Harris and you think this is wonderful, I mean, it's not. Next time a Republican candidate can collude, it's not something that we want to allow. Obviously, media being one of the pillars of our democracy right now seems very much compromised, right? This is not a good look. And really, we want to call it out again in a bipartisan way.
Now, U.S. lawmakers are still unsure as to where billions of dollars have gone years after federal COVID-era relief was passed. So reports estimate that anywhere from $200 billion to $500 billion was lost to waste, fraud, and abuse across various federal and state COVID-era programs. So what can you tell us about this, Lisa?
You know, I mean, it's not surprising, right? We all knew how people were scamming the government, getting checks sent to addresses where they didn't live, you know, really taking advantage of the fact that the government was giving out so much money. I mean, how can we really recoup that money? I mean, it's pretty much impossible. But, you know, the fact that these reports are coming out, again, something that people said at the time was looked at as a conspiracy theory, and here you have it. The numbers, the receipts, it all adds up in terms of just the fraud and the stealing. And you know, this is you know, it's so un-American, but yet it's so commonplace right now. And that's really the upsetting part about all of this, is how commonplace all this fraud and stealing from the government has become.
Okay, so looking our eyes now across over to the Middle East, we have seen the second anniversary of Kurdish Iranian Mahsa Amini's death in police custody. That anniversary is approaching soon. And reports are emerging that the Islamic Republic has deployed security forces to her hometown and have even placed her family under house arrest. So, Lisa, why is this happening? What's going on?
Right. So this is the anniversary of the Mahsa Amini murder. She was killed at the hands of the Islamic Republic, the morality police, because she was wearing her hijab too far back. And if you recall, in the aftermath of her death, there were months and months of protesting. And that was one of the most, if not the most significant round of protests that we've seen from the Iranian opposition inside the country and outside. We've seen a lot of protests that were in support of that in Canada, in the United States, in Europe, around the world. And now for the anniversary of her death, there are protests. Again, we saw protests in Paris yesterday. There was one here in Los Angeles yesterday as well, where I actually had the honor of attending the dedication of a neighborhood square in Los Angeles for Women, Life, Freedom, which is the tagline of the protests in honor of Mahsa Amini. But you know, the regime is afraid that this is going to start up again. This is something that hasn't gone away. I mean, they may have been silenced, they may be killed, they may have their eyes gouged out, but the people, particularly the women of Iran who are leading a lot of these protests, they're still disenchanted, and they will still come out onto the streets, and they will still risk their lives to have their stories told, to fight for that freedom. So I think this is what the government is trying to prevent on the anniversary. They closed streets. They made it impossible for people to go to her, to the cemetery where she is buried. That's somewhere where people would usually gather. And of course, putting her family under house arrest. They are the symbolic, you know, leaders of this protest and this disenchantment. But I say this in all my interviews. Mahsa Amini was just one victim of this regime. This regime has thousands and thousands of victims. And, you know, she became the symbolic name, face, icon of this round of protests. But there are so many young Iranians that are still suffering, that are still living without their basic freedoms. And they will come out onto the streets again until they get that freedom.
Yeah, I can't believe it's only been 2 years also since that happened. Feels like so much has happened since then. It's very sad. Okay, so moving on here, Britain and the U.S. have raised fears over a nuclear deal between Russia and Iran. And it looks like Russia has shared nuclear secrets with Iran in return for Tehran supplying Moscow with ballistic missiles to bomb Ukraine. Lisa, tell us more about this, please.
So, the United States, the West feel as though if they isolate an enemy, they will be able to, be without, whether it's without weapons, whether it's without money, whether it's about, without trade partners, and to really, minimalize them that way. In the last 4 years or so, we've seen our enemies not truly diminished by sanctions, by, waivers. The Biden administration has been more lax on Iran's regime, for example, on China, for example. And these rogue nations have found ways to collaborate. They found ways to trade, to strike deals, to sell oil to one another, to sell weapons to one another. And that's why you have, Russia and Iran working very closely with one another and really raising concern for what could be next. We already know that Russia was using Islamic Republic-made weapons in Ukraine. That has been talked about for months and months. We also know that China and the Islamic Republic struck a 25-year deal where they will be trade partners. We know that the Islamic Republic is selling oil to China and Venezuela. In the last almost 4 years, they sold almost $100 billion in oil. That's the money that they're using for their terror proxies: Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis. October 7th, funded, given weapons to, trained by this same support, money, resources, etc. So this is when we connect the dots on all of this. Obviously, it starts at the White House. It starts with the West, the positioning of the West, how we view these rogue elements, how we try to minimize their actions, how we try to, put boundaries and limitations and restrictions on them so that they cannot do these things. It's all about deterrence, and it starts with deterrence at the podium and not, with the Houthis shooting at U.S. and European assets in the Red Sea. So we have come a long way, as you said, in the last few years. It seems like so much has happened, particularly in the last year alone. And we're just hoping that it de-escalates rather than escalates in the next year to come.
Yeah. And then now we have the Islamic Republic, which has announced a successful satellite launch. And it looks like footage of the send-off was identified by the Associated Press. But the U.S. condemning it, saying Iran's space launch vehicle programs provide a pathway to expand its longer-range missile system. So, Lisa, it sounds like this is something we should be concerned about.
Should be concerned about, but a slap on the wrist or you shouldn't have done that isn't going to stop the Ayatollahs. And that's really the bottom line. There has to be a position in place that does deter them from this type of rogue behavior. We saw this under the Obama administration, where they had a much more lax approach to the Islamic Republic. Not only a lax approach, but they really wanted to strike a deal with them. So they were making nice with them. The Obama doctrine on the Islamic Republic was that if we play nice, if we normalize relations with them, we'll have a safer world. And it was just the opposite. We saw that. Under the Trump years, we saw a pressure campaign, which put them on notice. They got, they were put under severe sanctions. I mean, we saw the Hezbollah, Hamas suffering, not being able to fund their terror activities the way that we're seeing them do now. And then the Biden administration, again, being, taking from the same handbook as the Obama administration, trying to make nice, trying to overlook a lot of these rogue actions by Iran's regime to strike up another nuclear deal, because they felt that that was, the way to conduct foreign policy. They felt that that was the way to tame the beast, so to speak. And we see that, again, it was not. The Islamic Republic has never been in such an advantageous position in terms of how much money it has, how it's calling the shots, how it's finding these strange bedfellows in Russia and China and others. And of course, keeping the protesters at bay, the biggest Achilles heel of the regime being the people, the protesters, the opposition, and having full control and really intimidation over them as well.
Now we have the country of Turkey that has denounced Israel's assault on Gaza and has been advocating for a ceasefire in Gaza. No surprise there, I guess. Many countries are asking for that. But Turkey's spy chief recently met a delegation of leaders from the terrorist group Hamas. So, Lisa, what are your thoughts about that?
I mean, this is awful. I mean, this is a NATO partner. This is a country that has been viewed as the West, as the Western Middle Eastern country. But we've also viewed Turkey in the last few years as an equal opportunity opportunist. They have played both sides. They have been Western when it benefits them, and they become, pro-jihadi when it benefits them. But this is something that's out there. It's really it's a rogue move. It's really a brazen move by Turkey to meet with actual Hamas leaders. I mean, they've met with Syria in the past few months, obviously in bed with Iran's regime as well. And now, of course, Hamas being just a tentacle of Iran's regime. So they've made their position well known, of course, standing, in opposition to Israel and the war that's going on right now. But I think that, again, there has to be a strong position coming from the West where we call out Turkey and say, if you want to be aligned with the West, you have to adopt and espouse the West's interests and the West's view on what's going on. It's interesting because I think this war has been so bastardized by the media and by the UN and by so many of these rights groups that people don't understand. And at the core of this is just you're either pro-jihad or anti-jihad, and they're coming for all of us. This is not just Israel's war. They happen to be fighting it for all of us. But if Turkey decides that it wants to be pro-jihad, then there has to be consequences in other arenas.
Looks like we're out of time here, but Lisa Daftari, editor-in-chief of the Foreign Desk, thanks so much for joining us today from Los Angeles.
Thank you for having me.
There are always differing viewpoints when it comes to how our province should be run, where the focus should be. Is it healthcare, education, the economy? Sometimes there are groups which try to influence party policy one way or the other. A new group has been formed in Alberta which is trying to do just that. It is called the 1905 Committee. Joining us now to discuss this is Nadine Willwood. She's the co-founder of the 1905 Committee, and she joins us from beautiful Fort Macleod. Nadine, welcome to Bridge City News.
Thank you so much for having me, Hal. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
You're welcome. Now, where did the name 1905 Committee originate?
Well, I think that number is not unfamiliar to a lot of people. 1905 is when Alberta became a province. And when we were trying to find an appropriate name, I kept emphasizing, what if we could do it all over again? And then we kind of thought about, well, the beginning and where we're going. And 1905 Committee is what we came up with.
So tell us a bit about your background in provincial politics and explain why you felt the need to start up the 1905 Committee.
Absolutely. So my background provincially started actually from a federal perspective, and I had started doing some work with the People's Party of Canada in 2019-2021. And then when Daniel Smith was elected the leader of the UCP, I thought we would see some true grassroots changes there. And I decided to throw my hat in the ring, actually for the Livingston-Macleod riding. And I was disqualified, regrettably, by the executive at the UCP. I guess I have very strong opinions, and that's not always popular with party politics. I'm not, I guess, as easy to control as they would like. And from there, my background is a chartered investment manager, so I've been obviously following economics for at least 2 decades, and of course, politics drives a lot of the economy. And so when politics sort of arose as an opportunity for me to get involved, I took kind of my background and meshed that a little bit with what I have been learning over the last 6 years. And thus we looked at what was missing, truly missing in the space as far as true representation by the people. And 1905 was born.
So did party officials with the UCP explain why you weren't able to run for the party?
Yeah, I have a long letter of reasons. I think the big one, honestly, was just they felt I could not fit in with their team as far as the party goes. My opinions around, things at the time. I have an aerospace and defense background. I have a lot of history and understanding as far as, military industrial complex. And I had a slightly different view on Ukraine and how we should deal with that. They also didn't like the fact that, I'm very much, I guess, one of those freedom fighters a little bit as far as COVID was concerned. And not so much a freedom fighter. I just wanted to see the protection of individual rights maintained in our province. And I can go on with a long list. I won't bore you, but those were some of the controversial issues that they didn't want to deal with.
So Nadine, what are some of your core goals with the organization 1905 Committee?
So some of the core goals, really, I'd say that if you had to pick one, it's about leadership accountability. A promise made needs to be a promise kept. And it doesn't matter who I speak with from any different political background, they all agree that if you're going to campaign and you're going to run an election, you need to follow through once you've been elected on those promises. And so one of the policies I probably would think our most popular policy that we are now currently pushing here in the next UCP PM is leadership accountability. So you have 24 months to fulfill your campaign promises, verbal or written, doesn't matter. You made a promise, you have 24 months to keep it. If not, you go back to a leadership review, and now you have to account to the people who elected you as to why you did not fulfill those promises. So if there's one area I think that everybody can agree on in this province is we need more accountability from our government.
Nadine, you just recently launched. What kind of interest has your group been generating so far?
We have generated quite a bit of buzz, actually. There's been a lot of talk, a lot of speculation, a lot of rumors, people trying to figure out how we fit into the political spectrum, which is great for us because, of course, it's really gotten the word out there. People know we're here and we exist. So it's been a lot of fun, very exciting. But the reality is, we've got Edmonton's attention. And I think that's really what we've been trying to do. And we are attracting people from all different political spectrums and all different backgrounds. Obviously, we have more of a conservative focus, but the principles, we are about principles and policy. And because we're about principles and policy, we really do appeal to a lot more people in a very unifying kind of way.
So how many members would you say you currently have, and are you receiving some good financial support so far?
We are getting lots of good financial support, small donations, some bigger donors as well. I wouldn't even begin to guess at this point. I've been so busy just really pushing the agenda, getting out to places like this. I haven't really focused on counting numbers. So we'll have to get back to you with that number.
Now, I'm curious to know, Nadine, are you getting a lot of people from the Take Back Alberta campaign maybe switching over to yours?
It's been interesting. We've had a lot of opposition in some respects from the Take Back Alberta. There seems to be this thought that we are trying to get rid of Danielle Smith. And there are very much fans of Danielle Smith. And for us, it's not about the leader. It's not about the party. It truly is about accountability. But because some people do feel threatened, I think it's kind of, got people's attention in some respects. We've become a target for some individuals to come after on the Take Back Alberta side. And then there's other people who have been really disenfranchised with the fact that Take Back Alberta has become a little bit more a David Parker organization. It served this province so well in so many ways in re-engaging the citizens politically. But I think where it missed out was it needed a broader base and a better foundation. It was sort of formed around one concept: get rid of Jason Kenney. And for us, it's about leadership accountability, and we're really going to focus on principles and policies. And I think when people understand that, I think some of the fear and some of the threat will go away to some of these other organizations. And we are really something that they can actually be a part of as well. We're not looking to replace anybody. We're just looking to kind of be this bigger umbrella tent where there's a place and a home for everyone.
So what is your current view of our Premier, Danielle Smith?
I think Danielle Smith has done some things well, but I think there's been a lot of campaign promises that have been made that just haven't been kept. And I think there's been some, in my opinion, poor judgment decisions made. We did a Redford survey poll, and a lot of people didn't agree with the fact that she appointed Alison Redford to a Crown Corporation. Of all the people in this province, as far as even Conservatives, I think Alison Redford is one of the least liked. And I think that was a poor judgment decision on her part. She's promised tax reduction. She hasn't followed through on that. For me, it's about priority. If you're going to, talk about a high-speed train between Calgary and Edmonton before reducing taxes, as you have promised in your campaign, I think, again, that's a lack of judgment.
Let's talk about some of the campaign promises from our Premier Danielle Smith. One of those being amending the Canada-Alberta Cooperation on Immigration. Alberta does need people, but you believe perhaps similar to Quebec, we should be a little more cautious about who comes to live here in Alberta?
Absolutely. Economically, you have to have the economy able to keep up with the number of people that are coming into the province. And we have migration, I think, issues as well. We have a lot of people moving to Alberta because Danielle has rolled out the welcome mat. And she's even commented that we need 10 million, or she expects to see 10 million people in the province in the next 20 years. Housing, economy, jobs, we just do not have the capacity for that. And so I think we need to take a very realistic approach with what realistically we can accomplish, what we can do. And again, Quebec is a very distinct society, but so is the West. Alberta has a very specific, distinct culture, history, and I think we risk losing that by allowing too many people into the country without proper measures to integrate them properly into our society.
Now, Nadine, you would like to see the UCP get the province back to a flat tax. Why do you feel that's so important? And how soon would you like to see that implemented?
Well, two reasons, actually. We had an Alberta advantage for a long time, and it was one of the least expensive places to live, and business boomed here, entrepreneurs boomed, freedom really flourished. And I think if we could get back to that, and I think taxes is a huge part of it. Right now, Alberta is not an inexpensive place to live. We pay a lot in taxes. And I voted, instead of just reducing taxes, to go to a flat tax for two reasons. Not only does it keep more money in the pockets and the jeans of Albertans, but it also will help with political favors. If everybody is paying the exact same and everybody see one rule of law that applies to everybody equally, then it's very difficult for politicians to use tax dollars to gain political favor.
Now let's discuss leadership accountability for just a moment here. You believe the party brass should implement a mandatory leadership review 2 years after an election if campaign promises haven't been fulfilled. Who would really determine this?
I think if we put that into a policy at the UCP, at the NAGM, everybody votes on it, and we really push this through. Politicians honestly believe that they are held accountable once every 4 years at the polls. And the greatest amount of influence I think we as individuals have are at the AGMs and at the political party level. And so I think if we can, as a grassroots movement, we're supposed to be a grassroots organization, can push a policy like this, it holds politicians to account. The worst thing I think that can happen with a politician is they get too comfortable. And I think being a little uncomfortable and knowing there are people watching and now they are accountable for what they say and have to follow that through with appropriate action is the best way to return politics to a more grassroots, honest, open, transparent way of working.
With a new job, there's a probationary period. Some companies have 3 months, 6 months. Maybe we should do the same thing for our politicians.
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. You and I are accountable for the jobs that we do. We have to be doing a good job. We have to be accountable for what we say. And if not, we need to either be replaced or we need to say, okay, what do we need to do to improve? And so this is a great way, I think, for everyday citizens to provide feedback to their politicians.
Now, your website declares Constitutional Convention. Alberta resolves to initiate and promote constitutional reforms with other provinces, focusing on key priorities such as equalization, access to tidewater, and health transfer payments. How do you really envision this happening?
Well, I think everybody will agree that Alberta hasn't really gotten a fair deal with the federal government. And I don't think Ottawa is really ever going to sit down with us to discuss how we can get a truly fair deal. So I think the focus really needs to be speaking with much like what you're seeing with Saskatchewan now and Danielle Smith. They're kind of aligning, which is a more unified and a bigger camp, to take on some of the federal policies. Now, if we can bring BC into that conversation and Manitoba into that conversation, I think that's the way to go. So Alberta trying to do it on its own, Saskatchewan trying to do it on its own. I don't think we're going to get really anywhere with that. So I think what we really need to do is have the conversation with the provincial premiers and really come up with those policies and then push those policies forward as a united force. And so constitutional convention, I think, is the right way to do that. It hasn't really been effective even in the US, but we have to start somewhere. And I think it's a good place to start the conversation.
Naheed Nenshi, the former Calgary mayor, is now the new leader of the Alberta NDP, and the race wasn't even close. He took something like 67,000 votes, about 86% of the vote. How should the UCP respond now to this, seems like a very popular candidate and the new leader of the Alberta NDP?
Well, I think realistically, the UCP has to play its own game. We have our own policies, we have our own viewpoints, and I think we really need to continue to grow our base, but not trying to win over the left. I think realistically, what we need to do is be really strong, really accountable, be open, transparent. And I think that's what people are looking for. I honestly believe people are so done with politics. Why? Because they go, that's just politics. That's politicians. This is what they do. And I think we can do it better, and we need to do it better. And I think if we can honestly show people that politicians show that they're listening to what the people want, what people have to say, and get back to the proper role of government. And I think that's where a lot of people have gotten confused. There's a lot of benefits and a lot of political favors, but those are pet projects. Let's get back to basics, and let's be open and transparent. Danielle Smith promised when she was with the Wild Rose, smaller government, smaller spending. And what did she do? Bigger government, bigger spending. And I think people in Alberta would be happy to see a limited government that's restrained in its spending, keeping more dollars into the pockets of Albertans so that they can be the ones to grow the economy. Government's not productive. Businesses, individuals, that's where the productivity comes from. And as it's been pointed out so many times today, even the OECD, Canada is not a very good place to be right now as far as production goes. And I personally believe that's because government has just become too big and the budgets are just too large. And, the private sector through regulation has been beaten down, and we have to start removing those obstacles.
Nadine Wellwood is the co-founder of the 1905 Committee. Thanks so much for joining us today from beautiful Fort Macleod.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and thanks so much for watching.